Welcome to the Twin Bill Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Bolahan. This year, we're going to try to have a video version of the podcast up on YouTube, but that also means that we're going to be releasing episodes every other week for a while I try to get the hang of this. But this week, we're joined by Twin Bill contributor and great-grandniece of Branch Rickey to talk about her book, A Man Named Branch, the true story of baseball's great experiment, just in time for Jackie Robinson Day this week. For those of you watching, don't be alarmed, but my hair is about to grow a lot. Enjoy. Welcome to the podcast, Marjorie. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
It's
It's a
great
little bit
to
of
hear.
snow in the ground, but I'll be better when it's, really spring.
Wait, you just said you're in Williamsport, right?
Yep. But we got a little bit of snow last night, so
Did yeah,
crazy. Yeah.
yeah. I've been to the League World Series a couple times, and it is a great
Yeah.
experience. Yeah,
It's
it really, really is. But today we are here to talk about your book, A Man Named Branch. We actually published you. We were just talking about this quite a years ago now that we published you. You wrote a poem for us. It was about Jackie Robinson and August Wilson's Fences.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Yeah. And that was great. And on the same theme, your new book is about Branch Rickey, who is actually a relative. You are his great-grandniece. I'm terrible at relationships. Can you walk me through what that means? Like, how are you related to Branch
Yeah,
Rickey?
it's a little complicated, but my mother was part of the Orla Rickey family, and Orla Rickey was Branch Rickey's older brother.
Okay,
So all my aunts and uncles are from that part of the family.
got
And
it.
I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, so the people I know are from that era.
So I guess before we start talking about the book here, when did you realize that you were related to Branch Rickey? When did that mean something to you? It was just kind of part of your life?
It was. I just grew up with stories about my Uncle Branch, and my mother would often talk about going places with him. He put her through Ohio Wesleyan. She used to go to ball games with him. I think she met Red Barber and Jack Benny at some point at a ball game. But I mean, I was very young. I showed you a photo of me with a family birthday party. So I was born in 59 and he died in 65. So I don't have a lot of memories of him kind of firsthand, but it was something that was talked about in the family.
That's that's great. So at what point did you decide that you wanted to write this book? Is this something you've been thinking about doing for a long time, or is this it's like, you know what, it's time? Or how did this come about?
I actually wrote this book probably 15 or 20 years
Oh
ago.
wow, okay.
I was at a Highlights magazine. They have a kind of a retreat center in Honesdale, Pennsylvania. And I took a bunch of my biographies that I had, a bunch of research, and I just sat myself down in the house or the cabin, I can't remember which, and just wrote for like 4 days and got the draft done. And the idea really came to me once when I was driving to school. His name was Branch, and in his brain was brewing a great experiment, and that refrain became kind of a chorus in the book. So this is really kind of a poetic, chatty narrative. It's not one of those. It's a slim volume. It's not one of those thick, kind of hefty, hard to get through biographies. Although I like biographies, I'm intrigued by them. Um, but it's really kind of geared from ages 8 through adult.
Hmm.
I've had kind of all ages buying the book, but a very kind of friendly narrative, I think.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned the poetic sort of nature of it, because I felt the same thing reading the book there. And obviously you've written tons of poetry. You published tons of poetry books, and it definitely shines through here. The writing, it does have that really kind of like bounce to it in places. It's a really lovely little book. When you're sitting down to write this book, did you have in mind writing this for that sort of young adult, middle grade? Was that always part of your plan?
I think I wanted it. I wanted the story to be told to kind of a younger generation.
Yeah.
I want some older readers too, but I really think it's important. There's so many great biographies. Lee Lowenfish is one on Branch Rickey for adults, and lots of wonderful and biographies on Jackie Robinson for all ages. but I couldn't find any biography on Branch Rickey for a younger audience. And I think it's, a story that needed to be told. I mean, it came out in 42, and I wrote the first draft of this before that movie came out.
Yeah.
I was kind of hoping that they would pair at that time. But, sometimes you have to wait for things, and it's very exciting that it's out now.
Yeah.
But it tells the story, of course, of the signing of Jackie Robinson, but also all these other great things that Branch Rickey did. And also this idea of standing up to bullies and standing up for what is right, which I think is so important for that age group, to learn that it takes courage to stand up not only for yourself, but for others as well.
You talked about the research process here when you were reading biographies. How much of this comes from family lore, family stories? Did that play a big part of writing this book?
I think it played a huge part. I would just hear all these stories from the family, but then also when I was writing it, I would talk a lot with my mother. My mother at that point, she's no longer alive, but she lived in Phoenix near my sister. And so we would have long conversations where I would read passages to her and, ask for her input or if that seemed, correct. And that was just nice to kind of hear those stories again through her voice and her memory. So that kind of was the basis of it. And then I think I added the research kind of to double check things and add things and, add the transitional ideas and experiences to, the kind of the family narrative that I had.
Do you have a favorite story that your mom would tell you or like a family story that is one of your favorites?
Well, I think she would often talk about what a terrible driver Branch Rickey was. And I remember I watched the movie 42 with her, and she said, "Oh, that's just like him," and and some of kind of his absent-minded situations. But then also the ones that are in the book about Tommy Thomas and trying to rub off his skin.
Yeah.
That whole situation that's in the movie 42 as well. But that was a family story that was told quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I want to talk about his. So Branch's upbringing. He was an Ohio boy, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Just
Death Run, Ohio.
Yep.
Yeah.
What was that upbringing like for him?
Well, I mean, he came from a religious family, Methodist background. He famously was told by his mother that he shouldn't be playing baseball on Sunday, and the story goes that he kept that promise. He was close to his brothers, and they were also, of course, very involved in the whole baseball business, especially Frank. So I think just that kind of close-knit family,
Yeah.
and that support. He arrived at Ohio Wesleyan not really prepared for college, but dug in and found a way to play ball. And there's a story about him getting in trouble for not realizing that he wasn't allowed to be paid to play ball and also be a college student. And so he had to kind of work with that, but he told the truth about things, and they were impressed enough to find a way that he could still kind of do everything that he wanted to do. I'm hoping to read next year at Ohio Wesleyan, so we'll see how that
great.
works out. But I'm in contact with folks there, and he's a Branch Rickey lore is very big, of course, on the campus there. So
At the time, Branch was quite the athlete. He wasn't just a baseball player. He was playing football, and he ended up playing both professionally, correct?
yes, so he played quite a bit. He wasn't what I would consider, what people considered a fantastic player. And then, he had some injuries, so that, held him back. But he really kind of, well, blossomed isn't the right word for baseball, but, came into his own when he started heading things up.
After he leaves college, he goes, obviously, he plays in major leagues for a little bit. He's, as you kind of mentioned, not the best major leaguer of all time.
Well,
We're not
not
talking
bad,
about him because of his playing career. But he does play professionally. But then he pretty quickly sort of moves into that front office manager up in the front office kind of areas pretty quickly after that. Does he enjoy this? Does he like this? Is this a way for him to stay connected to the game? Why does he sort of head in this direction?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he was, studied law, of course.
Yeah.
But he was always pulled back to baseball.
Yeah.
And I think, well, you would understand that, if you're a big fan, that's what you're drawn to, right?
Hmm.
And once you are part of it, I think you're really part of it.
So obviously Jackie comes along, but he has changed the game in a number of ways. He's essentially created the minor league system. All these kind of things that I didn't fully realize he was really kind of responsible for. You hear so much about Jackie, and obviously that is a incredibly huge impact. But he really did touch the game in more than just that one way.
Yeah,
Uh,
even things like the Fellowship of Christian Athletes,
yes.
um, the getting kids involved, the Not Hang Gang, yeah, all of that that you don't hear as much about, but is
Yeah.
important. Yeah.
So Jackie enters the story. We're talking the mid 40s right now, and Branch has wanted to do something like this for a while, correct? Like he's been very open to the idea of having African Americans play baseball. How does he end up with Jackie? Why Jackie? And what is their relationship like?
Well, I think it all has to do with finding someone who's not only a fantastic player, but who could do the really hard job of patience and perseverance. I mean, he had to wait 3 years, had to put up 3 years with people sliding into his shin and calling him names and death threats and, um, you know, really horrific stuff, as you know. So it wasn't just any person that he could pick. It had to be, yes, a good ball player, but also somebody who could have the wherewithal to really see the larger picture. I think that's something that is you have to keep in the context of the time period. I often read the passage from the book about where Branch is giving that hard interview to Jackie, and he's pretending to be a huge bigot and a racist and calling him all kinds of names to see how he'll respond to kind of forewarn him of what he's going to have to put up with. Um, and there's that idea of turning the other cheek. Well, who would want to be turning the other cheek nowadays? But at that time period, if he didn't, persevere for those 3 long years, the integration may not have happened. So it really took tremendous, tremendous courage on Jackie Robinson's part to, to to know what was coming and yet to kind of stand his ground and do what he needed to do to get to that final goal. I got to meet Rachel Robinson once. That was cool. Yeah. And she
Did
said,
you really?
yeah, I did. And the first time I went to Cooperstown, it was in 1997, just for the 50th anniversary of the signing. And my daughter was just 3 months old, and my husband came with me. And so I was one of the few women there at the time. Um, but there I was with a baby in a stroller, which was, kind of cool. But I got to meet Rachel Robinson, and she said, "Oh, Branch Rickey, that wonderful man," and that's all of our communication. But she just lit up, and that just made me feel you know wonderfully connected to her in that way, and with all these stories that I'd heard my entire life. She just seemed to be such a dear person. And she
Yeah.
came to Williamsport actually a few years ago. They have statues of Little League playing, and they have Jackie Robinson and um, George W. Bush, and I'm blanking on the third player that they have. But she came for the unveiling of the statue.
Wow. Well, that's really cool. It's kind of like a
Yeah,
coming together of the family histories there. That's really amazing.
yeah,
Yeah.
so that was cool. I didn't mean to
Wow.
interrupt you. Sorry.
Oh no, that's please feel free to drop any Rachel Robinson stories in there. That's great. Yeah, that's Always fine. Uh, um, so obviously, it sounds like Branch and Jackie, despite the really kind of tough situation that they sort of both started off in. I mean, it was a bold decision on Branch's part to go ahead and do something like this. It wasn't universally approved of. Obviously, he faced challenges different than Jackie did, but it was not an easy decision. But it sounds like the two of them really did bond. They did share this bond for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, I really think so. That they just forged this partnership and really worked together. I mean, Jackie did the hardest part, of
Yeah.
course, but they were in it together, and they were um, helping each other along the way, of course.
You may not have anything for this, but when you were researching this book, was there anything new that you learned or anything you were excited to like confirm, like, oh, this really did happen, that these things that I was always told? Was there anything like that that came up?
Oh, I don't know. It's kind of all melded together. I tell you one thing. Lee Lowenfish, who is the biographer who wrote one of the blurbs on the back, he was gracious enough to kind of look at the manuscript, and he's always telling me little quotations that he heard, wonderful sayings, interactions that Branch Rickey had with different people that I hadn't heard before. So, some of that I think kind of slipped in, but also just some, it's just nice to know.
Hmm. Uh, you mentioned, and you did send me the photo, that great
Yeah.
photo there of you as a little girl with Branch. Do you have any memories at all with him? Is it just kind of a blur? What do you remember anything about meeting him?
It's a little bit of a blur, but I do
Yeah.
remember those family birthday parties. My aunt was an artist and never married, and she had her art studio in her basement, and you can see in the back of that picture all these paintings of her. So, just the memory of all those birthday parties, is something kind of vivid in my mind. We kept in contact with his daughter, Mary, who became married. Name was Mary Eckler, and she's in that photo, and I remember her quite a bit. And when I had my first book of poetry published, my mother had a party at her house, and there was a reading at like a Barnes and Noble or something, and she invited Mary Eckler, and she came, which was quite a thrill at that time to have her there and that support from her. But we had, a lot of the family. We used to have Thanksgiving at Ohio State, and so all that the Rickey family came there. Um,
That's great. That's
yeah.
really cool. Um, you mentioned this is not your first baseball book. You've written a couple baseball poetry books as well, I believe.
Yes.
Can you talk a little about those? I love people who write baseball
Yeah, I'll
poetry.
tell you that. I don't know if you can see that on here. This is
So,
called Rules of the Game,
hmm.
Baseball Poems. It first came out from Boyd's Mills Press, which is part of the Highlights magazine, and then was reprinted by Whiff and Stock, so it's still Whiff and Stock. But when we first moved to Williamsport, my husband and I lived in a duplex, and in the backyard there was a playing field where a women's league played. So I used to sit out in the backyard and watch these teams play, and I just started writing baseball poems. And so a lot of the poems in this book are just about kind of defining poetically different terms and phrases. How do you define a balk? BALK. How do you how how do you see the dugout from the poet's perspective? How do you describe a long drive? How do you describe safe and all the kind of basic terms? So I kind of went through this baseball book and just terminology and decided they're all little short poems, but they have these wonderful illustrations. So the poems kind of become part of the illustrations. And then the illustrator, John Sanford, who's out of Chicago, um, not the novelist, but the illustrator. I was bold and I sent photos of my two kids, and he put them in some of the images.
Oh,
So
that's
that was
great.
really cool. Yeah, so
That's
that
very
was
cool.
fun.
Oh, that's great.
But I gave a lot of readings in the school system. I'm recently retired college professor. So I taught for 34 years at one of the state schools in Pennsylvania. But I also did a lot of school visits to elementary schools and would teach what I called writing poetry that moves. So I'd bring a big laundry basket full of bats and balls and tennis rackets and basketballs and hula hoops, and then have kids kind of act those out, and then we'd write poems about the motion and the movement, and how would you describe, the catcher in poetic terms. How would you describe some of those actions in baseball or any sport, or dance even. So that was a lot of fun.
Oh, that's great, because running the Twin Bill now for 6 years, I think we get a lot of people who wouldn't necessarily write poetry, but they love baseball and they're willing to try. It's sort of like a gateway into poetry, I think, for a lot of people.
And baseball is definitely the most poetic of the sports, don't you think?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's been a long-standing historical connection to poetry, I think, in baseball, starting kind of way back. So,
oh yeah,
I think of Marianne Moore and others who wrote so much about baseball.
I got one more for you, and it's kind of a big one. What do you hope that readers of your book will take away from the life of Branch Rickey?
I think, again, that I hope they'll take away the importance of kind of doing what's right, and standing up for what you believe in, standing up for others, despite the hurdles, despite maybe some of the consequences, knowing that it's important to stand by your word, to stand up for others. This book starts with Branch Rickey standing up to bullies. He was a school teacher when he was 17 at a little one-room schoolhouse where the students actually spit at the teacher, and they lost all their teachers. And he kind of battled with his fists at that point, but then he switches over to battling with his words. So I guess that approach too of battling with your words, and standing your ground, not violently, of course, but saying what can support other people as well.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
Yeah.
Well, Marjorie, thank you so much. This was great. The book is such a joy, and it's so great to hear. You feel like you're kind of like being let in on a secret a little bit by having you have written this book from the family. It's really special. I do hope people pick it up and read it. It's a great book for kids, and older than kids. I enjoyed it myself.
Great.
So thank you once again.
Thank you. It's been so
Take
fun
care.
to meet you in kind of in person.
You too. Yeah, no, it's always great. I love seeing people that we've published, and this is one of the problems with the online or the national. We don't get to meet everybody, and I do miss that. So it's always great to meet someone that I've known now for years, basically.
Yeah.
So it is great to actually see you.
Well, thank you so much, Scott.
All right. That was Marjorie Maddox. Her book, A Man Named Branch, The True Story of Baseball's Great Experiment, is out now. Our First World Baseball Classic issue is also out now, as well as on 406 Press. We have Brendan Gillen's Hang Time, Rich Purzer's Outfield Epiphanies right there. And coming up on May 19th, we have Lauren Broaddus's Wasn't Any Maybe So. Until next time,